Okay, in this video, I'd like to continue where I left off in the last video, and I was talking about MH370 vanishing and how the electrical side of this whole thing is working. So we're going to continue there and wrap this up in a video or two. I'd just like to say that I only started this YouTube channel for one person, and that person was Ken Wheeler, because he's the one that had figured out the whole magnetic dielectric counter space thing, along with Eric Dollard on the electricity side. So Ken was the magnetism guy, and he's the one that figured out the lowest pressure point in counter space is that where everything is funneling to, it's not magnetic attraction, because you can see that under the ferrocell. So where that is the missing key that I was missing in this whole thing. I'd just like to point that out, that I only started this whole channel just to show him what I was working on, and how all my pyramid stuff and all my Coral Castle stuff and all my Tesla stuff tied in with his stuff with magnetism and Eric Dollard's stuff with electricity, because Eric Dollard's called Tesla 2.0. So I told Ken when I first started this whole thing that I was going to take all his stuff, all my stuff, and all Dollard's stuff, and this is how the world is going to figure this whole thing out, that we've been sidetracked by this whole electron deal and all this false stuff. So my channel is very small, but you have to remember one thing: it's just like a pyramid. As you keep climbing, the smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. As that space gets smaller towards the top, that energy becomes greater. And I didn't start this channel to get any kind of numbers. It wasn't about numbers, it was about getting this information out there, because it's the most important thing that anybody should know. And this whole stuff is it's the most important thing. They should be taught from a very young age, all these concepts. So what I'm saying is, the people that watch this channel, I knew was going to be a very finite amount, because it's a very specialized thing that I'm talking about in science and physics. And I knew that. So it was never about trying to get numbers or anything else like that. So everything is just as I thought it would be, with what my numbers are on all my video views and my subscribers. But this is the key, because like I said, the smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. I know the people that actually watch my videos and get it and try to understand it and then they implement it. Those are the people that I'm making these videos for. It's a very finite amount of people that are gonna dig into this stuff and get it. But once you get it, you're gonna have it, and then you can share it with others. And that's the whole thing behind everything that I'm doing here. And it's the way that Nikola Tesla would have wanted everything to go too. So having made over 90 videos or whatever, I know that it's getting to the people that need to see it. And every one of my videos kind of like stepped up to the point that we're at now. I try to make everybody understand everything right from the ground up, so you can go back and watch them from the beginning and understand right where I kind of started, and we're just going to keep moving this whole thing forward. So thanks for watching. If you're one of the people that are seeing this video, you're one of the people that are supposed to see this video. let's continue. Okay, I'm the discoverer of the fact that they hid the whole MH370 thing on the flavor blasted extra cheddar goldfish carton just a few days ago. And they're showing you the magnetic, the dielectric, and the plane of inertia. They're showing you the black hole opening up and the tunnel for the white hole here. And they're showing you the event horizon here. This is MH370, okay, that's the plane. It's a different goldfish than all these other ones out here than these three here, because this is actually a representation of the plane. And he's got his sunglasses up because they're showing you that that's the pilot. And they're showing you the one eye because they're showing you who's in control. Illuminati. So when spun left, these three goldfish here in a triangular formation, just like the orbs around 370, they're showing you the counterclockwise spin, so it's going towards counter space. They're opening up the black hole, and then they're showing you on the exit, they're saying nothing beats the blast, because that's what the whole thing is. It's about this whole building up and then blasting, because everything can only hold so much and then it blasts. So nothing beats the blast, blast it. So they're showing you the exit, and then there's only showing you two goldfish here, or there was three here representing those orbs, but this other one is right here. It hasn't fully materialized out of counter space yet, so they're showing you the whole thing. And in the magic business, this is called the effect. It's what the audience sees, because these people love David Copperfield. They love The Illusionist, because that's what the whole thing is. It's from keeping you from understanding all this stuff. Okay, so let's continue. Here's what we're working with here. You're working with pi, phi, and psi. Pi, 3.1416. And then you're dealing with phi, with angles with magnetic flow. Then you have psi, dielectric flux, phase difference. You have alpha A dealing with angles. Then you got omega ohm, unit of resistance, angular velocity. You have kappa K, dielectric constant, coefficient of coupling, and susceptibility. The Greek alphabet is listing all of these. Okay, so when you do something called when you demagnetize, you remove magnetism from an object. A diamagnetic is a material that will not conduct magnetic lines of flux. Diamagnetic materials have a permeability rating less than air, 1, which would be the K dielectric value. A dielectric is an insulator, an electrical insulator. Dielectric breakdown is the point at which the insulating material separating the two electric charges permit current flow between the two charges. Dielectric breakdown is often caused by excessive voltage, increase in heat, or both. And then you have this thing called a dielectric constant. A dielectric constant is a method of eliminating the insulating properties of the dielectric using air as a reference. So this is how you would do it in the atmosphere to get your dielectric constant. So dielectric stress is stretching the electron orbit like pulling back a bow. So they go back in there. This is talking scientifically, so they're talking about the electron. So when you're pulling back the bow, you're building up tension, and then you release. So that's what this is doing. It's building up tension, then it's releasing. So UFOs, what they're doing, excuse me, what they're doing, they're emitting infrasound and terahertz frequencies. And that's what those so-called neutrino detectors and all that stuff is picking up on. It's the pyramidal energy. So, continue on here with what Dollard's talking about when you get to this thing called the limits of zero infinity. Okay, that's what this whole thing is showing. It's showing the limits of zero infinity. Okay, Dollard is talking about here. So when the limits of zero infinity is reached, time equals zero. There's zero resistance. It's cooled to absolute zero. There's zero conductance because there's zero magnetism that reaches the core. Meaning you have straight dielectricity. That's when it hits the point of vanishing, because it's no longer in the visible universe. It's in the other dimension. It's in counter space. We only got 2 dimensions to work with. This is how it's working. So, you had this thing called infinite velocity and the velocity of light. What they are, they're polar opposites or zeros in the system, like nodal points where it crosses from one to another. So it's where it's crossing from one state to another. So it's going from space to counter space. But there's this plane of inertia that's the boundary, that's the event horizon right here. So you got your, basically the whole thing is, it's just operating like everything. It's triplicate, it's the whole 369 thing, it's synergy, it's 2 conditions that always produce a third. It's the whole deal with the tetrahedron, it's how the whole thing's working. So anyways, what's going on here is this whole zero infinity, and that's when you don't have time. And that's what Nikola Tesla was talking about, this whole thing where when he accidentally electrocuted himself and the assistant had to throw the switch, he said that he saw the past, present, and future all happening at the same time. So, 2 monopoles is like an hourglass. In the center, there is no time. And this is just showing more stuff on the magnetic from Ken Wheeler here. So, like Ken says, the magnetism is the dielectric, or magnetism is the dielectric field. It's the same thing. The whole thing is the dielectric field, but magnetism is just the hot end of the field, to where the dielectricity would be at the cold end. So like I said, the smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. And the whole thing is with the bismuth and these other elements that are super good dielectrics, is how they dissipate heat, and how is just the complete opposite of what electromagnetism is, basically. So bismuth is the most abundant one that there is. So bismuth hates magnetism, basically, and it's anti-magnetic, you know what I mean? So it's the world's largest diamagnetic element. Oh, I'm sorry, bismuth is the world's most abundant we have, and it's the most abundant in the universe as well, I should say. So the pyramid is the analog to a black hole on Earth. And then you get into this whole thing here. called a single anode magnetron. A single anode magnetron uses the magnetic field instead of an electric charge to control the current flow. This led to the development of the magnetron tube. Okay, so in this design, the tube was made of 2 electrodes, usually with the cathode in the front, usually with the cathode in the form of a metal rod in the center and an anode around it. The tube was placed between the poles of a horseshoe magnet, arranged so that the magnetic field was aligned parallel to the axis of the electrode. With no magnetic field present, the tube operates as a diode, with electrons flowing from anode to cathode. In the presence of a magnetic field, the electrons will experience a force at right angles to the direction of motion, according to the left-hand rule. The electrons will follow a curved path between the cathode and anode. The current of the path can be controlled by varying either the magnetic field using the electromagnet or by changing the electrical potential between the cathodes. So they're talking the whole thing still with the electron theory on here, but at very high magnetic field settings, the electrons are forced back into the cathode, preventing current flow at the opposite extremes. With no field, the electrons are free to flow straight from the cathode to the anode. The point between extremes is the critical value or Hall cutoff magnetic field, and cut off the voltage where electrons just reach the anode. So, when a magnetron was operating at critical value, it would emit energy in the radio frequency spectrum. The electrons radiate radio frequency energy because a few electrons, instead of reaching the anode, continue to circle in the space between the cathode and the anode. This is called cyclotron radiation. This is the key to all this stuff. This is how they're doing it. So the frequency of the radiation depends on the size of the tube. Some tubes produce signals in the microwave region. So early tubes were limited to high frequency bands. Very high frequency bands were available in the late 1930s. Then ultra frequency came later. That's when all this stuff really kicked off. The magnetron was one of the few devices able to generate signals in the microwave band, and it was the only one that was able to produce power at the CM wavelength. So today's microwaves are 1.1 kilowatt and will create 700 watts of microwave power. HVS bands magnetrons produce 2.5 megawatt peak and the average power of 3.75 kilovolts. Microwave excited lightning system is the whole thing, like at Area 51 and at Tesla's lab, where he just had these bombs and the whole field was just generated through the building, and then you just have light. It's such as a sulfur lamp, to where a magnetron provides the microwave field. That's how it could have been generating this whole thing to where it's wireless. That's how this whole thing is working though. They're just getting this, they're getting this whole thing to build up, store it, and then blast it. And that's what you're seeing. It's just like a capacitor. It's having a positive, a negative, and a neutral. And then you charge it until it blasts. Because, like Dollar said, magnetic dielectric fields blast. So that's exactly what's going on. This is exactly what they're showing. And this is exactly what I'm showing you. So I hope you like these videos. Please check out my other ones. Have a good one.